In this section, I'm going to outline the professional learning support that's going to be on offer from the region to support the realisation of the curriculum for Wales. I think it's important to point out that the programme I'm going to outline has been nationally developed but will be regionally delivered. This has been designed to support stakeholders at all of the leadership milestones and also to provide some support for governing bodies as well in terms of their responsibilities as we move forward. So if we start with the programme for head teachers and senior leaders, the aspiration in this academic year, so between March and the end of this academic year in July, these are the key aspects that we are going to look to cover in the programme. Now, underneath each of these bullets on the screen is quite a significant programme of professional learning support. So in the first instance, we're going to look at leading change. We're in a period of unprecedented change in terms of education policy, and it's important that we look at evidence-based strategies to support us through those changes to ensure that we make the best of those on behalf of staff in school. The second thing there, developing a shared vision. To what extent is our current vision in line with the four purposes of the curriculum? How is that shared and developed with our wider stakeholders? What does that look like across the cluster in terms of the way we think about learning? In terms of the next bullet, the creating time and space for professional learning, we've got some great examples now in the region of schools who are taking very innovative and creative approaches to make the very most of the time that they have for professional learning, which we know is going to be the key to realising this curriculum amongst our staff. These and some of the theory that underpins that will be shared through this part of the programme. Also in this part of the programme, we have the leading pedagogy aspect, so the importance of ensuring that our staff are critically engaged with the 12 pedagogical principles set out for successful futures, know those really well and are able to utilise them to best effect to support the delivery of the curriculum as we move forward. Moving then into September, we're thinking about the way the curriculum is designed and developed. This is crucially important because in a curriculum that provides much greater freedom in terms of the context we select for learning, it's important to ask those questions. What knowledge, skills and experience should we be providing for our young people? Do different areas of learning require a different approach to planning, for example? Some subjects may require disciplinary teaching at key times, some will require it for the vast majority of the time. However, there will be aspects of the curriculum that perhaps would be better suited to an interdisciplinary approach in some of the issues and themes that we consider through the curriculum. So it's really important that we give that the time and space that it needs to make sensible decisions about how we design the time in our curriculum, and we work across areas of learning and within areas of learning to facilitate the best approaches. There are also a continuum of approaches if we look at integrating aspects of the curriculum from that very fragmented approach within disciplines to a webbed approach, perhaps where we consider thematic approaches and links across curriculum areas, to a fully integrated approach. And as mentioned previously, some of those may work at some times and not at others. So we need to make the best decisions and do that through what the available evidence is showing us. Make sure we take evidence-informed decisions to the way we design our curriculum. In terms of curriculum leadership, it's important that we're able to lead on those aspects of practice. So if we now move to thinking about the support that we're going to provide around middle leadership, between the February half term and the end of July this year, in terms of the time that's remaining, here were the kind of key things that we think it was really important for people to be engaged with and considering. So firstly, making sure that all middle leaders and teachers are familiar with the new curriculum framework and the guidance to ensure they fully understand the model and the approaches that are going to be taken in the new curriculum, that they have a really good understanding of the what matters, the progression framework, the descriptions of learning, and how those different aspects of the curriculum marry together, and how all of the design of that work is underpinned by the four purposes. So it's important that our middle leaders get a good understanding of that before they do any detailed work around curriculum design and start to experiment in different parts of the curriculum. From September 2020 onwards, then we'll be looking at some of that more detailed work. So what does long and medium term planning look like across areas of learning, and what are the different models that we could try in different areas? What is a good understanding of progression? What does that look like? We need to consider the cross-curricular skills and how they are weaved into areas of learning, where that is most appropriate. We need to consider disciplinary, interdisciplinary and integrated approaches, and which approaches we're going to use at what times within the curriculum, and what's most appropriate developmentally for our young people as we move through the continuum of learning. And also then the important considerations around pedagogic content. We know that in certain areas of learning and in certain disciplines within the areas of learning, there are very particular approaches to pedagogy that are going to work really effectively. So it's important to consider those and make sure that we're upskilled in those so that we're able to develop a really high quality curriculum. And then also we need to think about the assessment that underpins this curriculum, that understanding of progression into those descriptions of learning, and actually how we start to develop approaches to assessment using the descriptions of learning as our guide to doing so. As I mentioned, it's really important also that we engage with all of our key stakeholders at this time. So in terms of support we're providing for governing bodies, we've already run a few sessions for governors across the South East Wales region, and really it's about developing a familiarity again with the framework and what the proposed legislative requirements are and how they're likely to change as we move forward, so that governors understand what their responsibilities are and how they can support the school as we move through this transition period towards September 2022. As time moves on, this programme will also evolve to ensure that that governors are provided with the most up-to-date information and guidance. Finally, I think it's really important that we understand how this professional learning is going to be organised. Now, at the time of recording, we are currently only able to operate via a distance learning approach because of the social distancing rules that are in force. Therefore, what we are going to look to do is to deliver as much of the first term's work as we can through a distance and digital learning approach, through both digital assets and resources, but also some web-based workshops and opportunities for dialogue as we move forward. And then once we do return to a more business as usual approach, we're going to try to deliver our professional learning through on a cluster basis, so that we're working with schools right across the 3 to 16 continuum. But also we're going to work with at least 3 to 4 classes at a time to ensure that there is a broad range of schools across the different sectors, so that there are, for example, at least 3 or 4 secondary schools who can share some of their thinking and some of their challenges around the design of their curriculum, in addition to thinking about those important transition points and perhaps developing some commonality of approaches or commonality of thinking and concepts as we move from the age of 3 through this continuum of learning. So the organisation will be a moving feast over the next few terms, but eventually, once we get back to live delivery in practice, we'll look to organise that through a series of geographic clusters.